The day she decided to quit, the city was drowning in the soft gray of a rainy evening. Windows shimmered with streaks of water that looked like melting stars. Inside the tall glass building of Heartfelt Dynamics, a company known for innovation and impossible deadlines, a single light still burned on the 12th floor. That light belonged to Lena Carter, a 30-year-old project coordinator who had spent the last 5 years giving everything she had to a job that rarely gave anything back. Her desk was a battlefield of half-empty coffee cups, wrinkled notes, and a single framed photo of her parents smiling in front of their small bakery. Her eyes were red from staring at spreadsheets and performance reports that someone else would claim credit for in the morning meeting. She wasn't new to this routine. She had lived it for years. Every time she reached a milestone, her manager, Cliff Rowan, would stand on the stage, praise the team, and then somehow make sure Lena's name never appeared on the slide. That night, something inside her finally cracked. The rain outside echoed her heart, steady and heavy. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed her resignation letter. She had practiced those words in her head for months, but writing them down felt like lifting a mountain from her chest. I hereby resign from Heartfelt Dynamics effective immediately. She reread it 3 times. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat, daring her to press print when the printer whirred to life. It sounded louder than thunder. She took the paper, folded it carefully, slipped it into an envelope, and whispered to herself, "This is it, no more waiting, no more pretending." Lena stood and looked around the office. Rows of empty cubicles stared back at her, silent witnesses to years of unnoticed effort. She thought of the late nights, the birthdays spent at her desk, the endless revisions she made because someone else didn't care enough to get it right the first time, all for a salary that barely paid her rent, and a pat on the back that meant nothing. She didn't want to wait until morning. She didn't want HR procedures or polite goodbyes if she was going to leave. She wanted someone at the top to understand why. Why good people were burning out in silence, her mind made up. Lena grabbed her umbrella and walked toward the elevator. The glass doors reflected her tired face. Faint mascara smudges, hollow eyes. The exhaustion of someone who had fought too long without being seen. She pressed the button for the top floor. The CEO's office. She had never been there before in 5 years. She had seen Ethan Cole, the CEO, only from a distance, tall, sharp-eyed, and always surrounded by a circle of executives. He had the kind of calm that made others quiet when he entered a room. People said he was brilliant but cold, the kind of man who saw numbers, not faces. The elevator rose in silence. With every floor, her heartbeat grew louder. When the doors opened on the 20th floor, it felt like stepping into another world. Soft lighting, art on the walls, thick carpet that silenced her steps. No clutter, no noise, no exhaustion, just power wrapped in quiet. At the end of the hallway, one door glowed with light under it. She hesitated, then knocked. A calm voice from inside said, "Come in." Ethan Cole sat behind a large desk made of dark glass. His jacket hung over the chair, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his expression. He wasn't expecting anyone this late. "Can I help you?" he asked, setting his pen aside. Lena's throat tightened. Her carefully prepared words vanished. She held up the envelope instead. "Mr. Cole, I'm Lena Carter. Project coordinator in systems design. I needed to give you this personally." He gestured for her to come closer. Curiosity in his eyes. "At 9:30 p.m.? he asked with a faint smile. "It couldn't wait," she said quietly. "It's my resignation." The smile disappeared. He leaned back in his chair, studying her for a moment. Then, without saying a word, he stood and walked to the door. The soft click of the lock echoed in the silent room. Lena's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" she whispered. He turned to face her, arms folded, his voice calm but firm. "Stopping you from walking out in the middle of a storm, both outside and inside." "I'm not changing my mind," she said, though her voice shook. "Sit down," he said, nodding toward the chair across from him. "I won't keep you long, but if someone like you is ready to quit at this hour." "I need to know why." Lena sat reluctantly, her heart racing. She didn't want to cry, but the words she had swallowed for years finally broke free. She told him everything about the stolen ideas, the meetings where she was ignored, the promotions that went to people who took shortcuts. She spoke about the exhaustion that ate her weekends, the fear of speaking up, the quiet humiliation that became her normal. The words poured out like the rain outside, unstoppable, raw, real. Ethan listened silently. No interruptions, no dismissive nods, just quiet attention. When she finally stopped, her eyes were wet. She wiped them quickly, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't come here to cry." "Then maybe you should have," he said softly. "Sometimes the truth doesn't sound professional. It sounds painful." He walked to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a file. "Your file," he said. "I know who you are, Lena Carter. You joined right out of college, led the Apex campaign that boosted our client base by 27%. You wrote the proposal for the Nova project, the one Cliff presented last year as his own. I've been reading your reports for months." She stared at him in disbelief. "You knew?" "I knew something didn't add up," he replied. "But I wanted to see how long you'd keep fighting without recognition. I wanted to see if you'd still care about doing what's right even when nobody noticed." "That's cruel," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "Maybe. But it told me what kind of person you are," he said. "Someone who doesn't stop trying even when it hurts." He picked up her envelope, tore it in half, and dropped the pieces in the trash. "You're not quitting." "Not yet." "What gives you the right?" she began. "The right?" he interrupted, leaning forward. "The right comes from the fact that you earned your place here, and I refuse to let a toxic manager steal that from you." He walked to the window, hands in his pockets, looking at the rain-soaked city. "Tomorrow morning, Cliff Rowan will report to me. You won't be under him anymore from now on. You'll work directly with me." Lena froze. "Work with you?" "Yes, starting Monday," he said, turning to face her. "I'm launching a new initiative, a restructuring of how this company treats its employees. I need someone who understands both the problems and the people." "You do." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why me?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because 5 years ago, I was where you are now. I was overlooked, underpaid, and ready to give up. Someone saw something in me before I saw it in myself. I'm paying that forward." The room fell quiet. The rain softened, turning into a calm rhythm against the glass. Lena looked at him, at the torn letter in the bin. For years she had begged for someone to notice. And now, when it finally happened, she didn't know what to do. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered. "I don't need you to know," Ethan said. "I just need you to try." He extended his hand across the desk. "Do we have a deal?" Lena hesitated. The tired woman who had walked into this room wanted to disappear, but the woman sitting here now, the one who had finally spoken her truth, felt different. She reached out slowly and shook his hand. "I'll try," she said. "Good," he replied, his tone softening. "Then go home, rest, because Monday begins a new chapter." As she walked toward the elevator, she looked back once. Ethan was already on the phone, giving firm instructions to someone. Something told her that everything was about to change, not just for her, but for the company itself. When she stepped outside, the rain had stopped. The streets glowed under streetlights, reflecting a sky that was finally clearing. She took a deep breath for the first time in years. She didn't feel small, she felt free, she felt seen. And though she didn't know what Monday would bring, Lena Carter knew one thing for certain. She wasn't quitting anymore, she was beginning. The first day on the 20th of floor Monday morning rose beneath a pale golden sky. The rain that had ruled the weekend was gone, leaving the city washed clean and bright. Lena stood outside Hartwell Dynamics, clutching her small handbag like a shield. The revolving doors glittered ahead of her, whispering the same air of ambition that once made her feel proud, and later made her feel trapped. Today, they no longer frightened her. They challenged her. She stepped through, greeted the lobby guard with a nod, and pressed the button for the 20th floor. Her heart thudded with each rising number. When the doors opened, soft instrumental music filled the hallway. The air scented faintly with coffee and fresh flowers. The carpet swallowed her footsteps. The walls displayed art instead of motivational posters. This floor didn't look like any office she had known. It looked like calm power. At the elevator waited a woman in her 50s, dressed in a crisp gray suit and pearls. "Miss Carter?" she asked with a smile that reached her eyes. "Yes," Lena answered. "I'm Clara Reed, Mr. Cole's executive assistant. Welcome to the 20th floor, or as we like to call it, the eye of the storm," Clara said with a quiet laugh. "Come, I'll show you to your new office." They walked past a series of glass doors, behind which people were already busy typing or discussing over tablets. The hum of conversation was low and focused. When Clara opened one of the doors, Lena blinked. The office was bright, smaller than Ethan's but twice the size of her old cubicle. A wide window overlooked the skyline, and on the desk sat a new laptop, a plant, and a nameplate engraved Lena Carter, strategic project lead. Her breath caught. I didn't expect this, she whispered. You earned it, Clara said simply, placing a folder on the desk. Here's today's schedule. Mr. Cole wants to see you at 8:30 for the morning briefing. Coffee's in the lounge on your right. And if anyone gives you trouble, send them to me. Lena smiled shyly. Thank you. When Clara left, Lena touched the nameplate, tracing the letters with trembling fingers. It felt unreal. For years she had imagined recognition. But now that it had come, it felt heavier than pride. It felt like responsibility. At 8:25, she straightened her blazer, gathered her notes, and walked to the meeting room. Inside sat Ethan Cole, Michael Hale, the CFO, and Diana Torres, head of operations, three of the most powerful people in the company. Ethan looked up and smiled faintly. Morning, Lena. Take a seat. The meeting began at once. Charts appearing on the screen, numbers flying like arrows. They discussed profits, expansion plans, and a project called Helix Reform, which was meant to change how departments collaborated. Lena listened carefully, her mind absorbing every word. Then Ethan turned to her. Lena, you've worked on ground-level projects for years. Tell me what you see wrong with our Helix approach. Every head turned toward her. Her throat tightened, the old fear whispering that one mistake could ruin everything. But she remembered his words. I just need you to try. She took a slow breath. The Helix plan looks efficient on paper, she began, her voice steady. But it focuses on productivity, not people. Teams won't cooperate because the system rewards individual metrics, not collective results. We're trying to fix communication with more reports instead of more trust. Silence filled the room. Michael arched an eyebrow. That's a bold statement, Miss Carter, he said. Bold doesn't mean wrong, Diana murmured. Studying the slides again, Ethan leaned back, his eyes thoughtful. What would you change? He asked. Create shared incentives, Lena replied. Merge goals between departments, reward progress that benefits others, and open weekly cross-team sessions led by junior staff, not just managers. Sometimes ideas from the bottom can solve what the top can't see. Diana smiled slightly. Ethan nodded. Implement it, he said simply. Work with Diana and Clara to set up the first trial this week. The meeting ended, but Lena could still feel her pulse racing. When she stepped into the hallway, Diana caught up with her. You know, she said, most people spend months here before daring to disagree with Ethan. You did it in 30 minutes, good sign. Lena laughed nervously, or a dangerous one. Either way, it means you belong, Diana said. Walking away, by noon Lena was deep in work, rearranging charts, creating survey drafts, emailing department heads. Her fingers flew over the keyboard like they were making music. She didn't notice the glances from passing employees. Some curious, some skeptical, some whispering. The rumors had started already. She felt them like cold wind. Promoted after a late-night meeting, someone muttered near the coffee bar. Guess hard work means something else these days. Another laughed quietly. Lena's stomach twisted, but she kept her eyes on the screen. If she stopped every time someone doubted her, she would never move again. That afternoon, Ethan called her into his office. He was reviewing charts on his monitor when she entered. Without looking up, he said, How are you holding up? I'm fine, she said quickly. You're not, he replied, glancing up with a knowing look. You've heard the whispers. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. He leaned back, folding his arms. Let them talk, he said calmly. Words die when they meet results. Focus on the work. I'll handle the noise, but it's not fair, she said. I know, he answered, but fairness doesn't silence envy. Success does. Those words stayed with her long after she left his office. They burned quietly inside her like fuel. That night she stayed late, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. The city outside sparkled. Lights dancing on the windows. Clara passed by and shook her head. First day and already overtime? Careful, that's how it starts, she teased. Lena smiled. This time it's my choice. Clara grinned and left, leaving Lena alone with her thoughts and the quiet hum of progress. At 10 p.m., she finally packed her things. As she rode the elevator down, she caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. Same face, same tired eyes, but something behind them had changed. There was focus, not fatigue, confidence, not doubt. When she stepped out into the night air, the wind was cool and full of promise. For the first time, she didn't feel like an invisible worker lost in the crowd. She felt like someone rewriting her story. The whispers didn't matter anymore. The work would speak louder as she crossed the street. She glanced up at the shining windows of the 20th floor. Somewhere behind that glass, Ethan was probably still working too. Two people who refused to quit, fighting different battles for the same cause. She smiled faintly. Tomorrow would be harder. People would test her, doubt her, maybe even try to break her again. But tonight, walking under the city lights, Lena Carter knew something vital. She wasn't running away anymore, she was rising. The whispers and the war by the second week on the 20th floor. Lena had learned something important. Success is quiet, but jealousy is loud. The first days had felt like breathing fresh air after years underwater. She woke up early, excited, worked with purpose, smiled at people in the elevator. But soon the air began to thicken again. Not with work, but with whispers. They started small, drifting through the hallways like smoke. "She's the CEO's new favorite," someone said by the coffee machine. "Funny how she gets promoted right after a late meeting," another replied with a smirk. It spread quickly, the way rumors always do. By the end of the week, every smile she received carried a question behind it. Lena ignored it at first. She drowned herself in tasks, coordinating with Diana on the Helix reform, drafting surveys, attending back-to-back meetings. Her reports were sharp, her ideas stronger than ever. Even the senior board members began noticing her clarity and insight. But success, instead of silencing the whispers, seemed to make them louder. One afternoon, while she was reviewing department responses, a soft knock sounded on her door. Clara entered, her expression gentle but serious. "Lena, may I?" she asked, closing the door behind her. "Of course," Lena said, though her stomach tightened. Clara set a file on the desk. "I think you should know what's circulating downstairs." Lena opened the folder. Screenshots, snippets of anonymous posts from the company's internal message board. Each one twisted the truth in a new way. Some people get ahead through talent, others through charm. Guess who spent a late night with the boss and got promoted next morning? Her hands trembled as she turned each page. "This is disgusting," she whispered. "I know," Clara said softly, "but I thought you'd rather see it than be blindsided." Lena leaned back, fighting the sting in her eyes. She had worked for years to be seen as capable, not convenient. Now one rumor was threatening to erase all of it. "Mr. Cole knows," Clara added quietly. "He's already ordered HR to investigate the source. But these things take time." Lena nodded weakly. "I'll be fine," she said, though she didn't believe it. After Clara left, Lena sat in silence. For a long moment she stared out the window, watching the clouds drift over the skyline. Her reflection in the glass looked calm. But inside her, a storm was building that evening. She stayed late again. Work was her armor, focus her shield. But when the elevator doors opened behind her, she didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The familiar voice froze her heart. "Well, well," said Cliff Rowan, her former manager. "Didn't think I'd see you up here, Carter." Lena turned slowly. Cliff stood with his usual arrogant smirk, holding a file under his arm. "I see you've moved up in the world," he said, glancing around her office. "Quite the upgrade." "I must say, I earned it," she replied evenly. He laughed. "Sure you did." The tone was venomous. "Funny thing, promotions like this don't come easy. Unless you have—" "Let's call it influence." Lena's jaw clenched. "Watch your words, Cliff," she said quietly. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Don't worry. I'm not the only one who's noticed. Half the building's talking. And when they find out how you got here—" "Enough," came another voice. Firm and steady, Ethan stood in the doorway, eyes cold as steel. He had walked in without either of them noticing. Cliff straightened instantly, his smirk vanishing. "Mr. Cole, I was just leaving," Ethan interrupted. Now Cliff hesitated, then turned on his heel and left without another word. When the door closed, silence filled the room. Lena stood still, hands trembling slightly. Ethan's expression softened. "You okay?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, I didn't expect him to." "He won't again," Ethan said simply, walking to her desk. "Cliff has been warned before for workplace misconduct. Now he's officially on review." Lena sank into her chair, pressing her palms together. "I don't want special protection, sir," she said quietly. "This isn't protection," he replied. "It's accountability." He paused, then leaned forward slightly. "Lena, when people feel threatened, they create stories to feel powerful again. Don't let their stories rewrite yours." That night, she couldn't sleep. Every word, every rumor echoed in her mind. But somewhere between midnight and morning, a new thought began to form. She couldn't fight gossip with silence. She would fight it with truth. The next day, she arrived early. She gathered every report, every proposal she'd worked on. She compiled data showing her contribution, project histories, and client feedback. By noon, she had assembled a presentation titled Integrity in Action. When the weekly executive meeting began, Ethan raised an eyebrow when she asked for 10 minutes to speak. "Go ahead," he said, intrigued. Lena walked to the front of the room, connected her tablet, and took a deep breath. "Before we discuss this week's numbers," she began, "I need to address something that affects not just me, but our entire culture." The room fell silent. She continued, "Rumors have been spreading, ugly, baseless, and designed to discredit not just my work, but the principle this company was built on. I won't name names, I don't need to, because the truth speaks for itself." Slide after slide appeared on the screen. Her project records, timestamps, emails showing who approved what, client endorsements, and performance data. Every number told one story. Hard work, consistency, innovation. "I am proud of my work," she said, voice steady. "And I won't apologize for being seen after years of being invisible. If anyone doubts my place here, they can challenge me with results, not rumors." For a long moment, the room stayed silent. Then Diana began to clap. Slowly, firmly, others followed, until the applause filled the air like a wave. Ethan didn't clap, he only watched her, pride flickering in his eyes. When the sound faded, he said quietly, "That, ladies and gentlemen, is what leadership looks like." Lena returned to her seat. Heart pounding, she had done it, faced the storm and stayed standing. When the meeting ended, Ethan caught up with her in the hallway. "You didn't have to do that," he said softly. "Yes, I did," she replied. "I had to take back my story." He nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. "Good, because next week, I'll need you to help present the Helix reform to the board." Lena blinked. "Me? In front of the entire board?" "Yes," he said. "You've earned their attention. Now earn their respect." She laughed breathlessly. "You don't make things easy, do you?" "Easy doesn't build strength," he said. Then as he turned to leave, he added quietly, "You're changing this place, Lena, one storm at a time." That evening, as she stood by her office window, the city below shimmered like an ocean of light. The same city that once made her feel small now looked like a horizon, waiting for her to rise. The whispers had faded, replaced by something new, respect. And somewhere deep down, Lena understood that real strength doesn't come from power. It comes from standing tall when people expect you to fall. She smiled, softly whispering to herself, "This is only the beginning, the breaking point." The following month became a blur of motion. The Helix Reform Project had grown larger than anyone expected. What began as an internal experiment turned into the company's most ambitious transformation plan. Lena was now leading a cross-departmental task force, more than 50 employees, multiple time zones, and countless deadlines. Every morning started with video calls, ended with stacks of unread emails, and somewhere between the two, she tried to hold the team together. The first few weeks were filled with momentum and optimism. The plan was clear: merge department goals, reward cooperation, and change how success was measured. But as the plan expanded, cracks began to appear. Some teams resisted. Managers worried about losing authority. Others claimed the new system would slow productivity. And under the surface, old habits of rivalry began to resurface. By midweek, Lena's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Complaint messages, arguments in threads, half-finished reports, and a dozen urgent flags blinking at once. She stayed late again, scribbling notes under the dim light of her office. Her reflection in the window looked tired. Eyes rimmed red, she whispered to herself, "Just one more week, hold it together." At 9:30 that night, the door opened softly. Ethan Cole stepped in. Jacket over his arm, tie loosened, the picture of exhaustion wrapped in control. "You're still here," he said. "So are you," she replied with a weak smile. He chuckled quietly, setting his jacket on a chair. "Fair point, how's Helix holding up?" She sighed. "Barely, half the teams are pushing back. The rest are too scared to speak up, and I can't tell who's being honest anymore." Ethan leaned against her desk, arms crossed. "Leadership isn't about control, Lena, it's about clarity. Sometimes when people fight change, It's not because they hate it, but because they don't understand it. She looked up at him, tired but thoughtful. So what do I do? Listen louder, he said simply. Hold a meeting, no slides, no reports, just listen to what they fear. Then build from there. The next morning, Lena followed his advice. She gathered all department leads in the central conference room. No PowerPoint, no charts, just chairs arranged in a circle. The atmosphere was tense. Some arms crossed, some eyes skeptical. Let's skip the formalities, she said, standing in the center. I know many of you think Helix is flawed. So tell me why. I want honesty, not politeness at first. No one spoke. Then one hand rose. It was Marcel, head of analytics. With respect, Lena, he said, your plan punishes independent performance. My team thrives on competition, and now we're supposed to share everything. It feels like you're dismantling what works. Another voice followed. Priya, operations manager, added, and these new cross-team tasks double our workload. It's chaos, not collaboration. The room filled with murmurs. Lena listened, writing down each point, not defending, just absorbing. When the noise settled, she looked around. Thank you, she said quietly. You're right about one thing, it is chaos. But chaos is what change looks like before it becomes progress. I didn't come here to make your work harder. I came to make your success fairer. You want competition? Earn it through contribution, not isolation. You want recognition? Let it come from results that lift others too. The room went silent again. Slowly, nods began to appear around the circle. Not everyone agreed, but something shifted. The walls of resistance began to crack. For the first time, Lena saw what leadership truly meant. Not command, but conviction. Not applause, but endurance. Days passed. The project began to move again. Reports improved, meetings turned productive, and morale slowly recovered. But success has a way of testing the strong twice, and the second test arrived without warning. 2 days before the board review, the company server crashed. Half of the Helix data vanished. Project charts, feedback forms, performance metrics, everything. The system backups failed too. Panic erupted across departments without that data. Lena couldn't prove any of the project's progress. It would look like months of wasted work. By evening, the blame storm had begun. Emails flew, fingers pointed. Someone claimed her system changes had corrupted files. Another suggested the new management experiment was reckless from the start. Her phone buzzed nonstop with messages demanding answers. She stared at the screen, her throat tightening. This was it. The moment everyone had been waiting for. The moment the whispers could turn into proof. That night she sat alone in her office, lights dimmed. The floor was quiet. The city beyond the windows glowing in distant peace. Her mind screamed to quit again, to walk away before everything collapsed. But then she remembered the rain from that first night. The torn resignation letter. The words Ethan had said, I just need you to try. And she whispered to herself, trying doesn't end when things fall apart. At midnight, the door opened. Ethan walked in, face unreadable. I heard, he said, setting his phone down. Lena stood, eyes brimming. I failed, she whispered. All the data's gone, and the board meets in 48 hours. Ethan shook his head. No, you haven't failed. Failure isn't the fall. It's refusing to stand again. He pulled up a chair beside her. Tell me exactly what was lost, she explained. The analytics database, the project history, and all the survey metrics. He nodded slowly. All right, he said. Then we rebuild. Her eyes widened. In 2 days? Yes, he said calmly. If we can't show numbers, we'll show impact. You've changed how people work. Now prove it, not with spreadsheets, but with stories. The next morning, Lena gathered her team, her voice steady, her presence strong. We lost data, not direction, she said. Numbers measure progress, but people create it. So we're going to rebuild this from memory, from effort, from every real change you've seen. They worked through the night, interviewing staff, collecting testimonials, rebuilding charts by hand. People from every floor joined in, even those who once doubted her. It wasn't just work anymore, it was unity. When the board meeting finally arrived, Lena stood at the front of the massive glass-walled conference room. No graphs, no fancy metrics, just faces and voices. Videos of employees sharing how Helix had changed their teamwork. Clips of departments collaborating. Laughter replacing rivalry. Then silence as she finished her speech. Numbers can be lost, she said, her tone calm and clear. But the culture we build cannot be deleted. Helix isn't a file, it's a foundation. and we built it together." For a moment, the board members sat in stillness. Then one of them, the oldest among them, leaned forward and said quietly, "I've seen many projects crash under pressure." This one rose. "Approved." Applause erupted around the table. Ethan smiled, a rare, genuine expression that reached his eyes. As the meeting ended, he walked over and said softly, "You didn't just save a project, Lena. You proved that integrity survives even when systems don't." She looked at him, tears forming but her smile strong. "Thank you," she whispered. "Don't thank me," he said. "You built this storm, and you conquered it." That night, when she left the office, the city lights shimmered again, not as cold reflections, but as living proof of resilience. She walked under them slowly. Breathing deeply, she had broken, rebuilt, and risen stronger, and for the first time, she didn't feel like she was surviving a job. She felt like she was fulfilling a purpose. The legacy, 3 months later, the halls of Heartfelt Dynamics no longer echoed with tension. Where whispers once lived, conversations now carried purpose. The Helix reform had reshaped not just departments, but people. Competition turned into collaboration. Fear turned into trust. And at the center of it all stood Lena Carter, the woman who almost walked away. Her new title was Director of Organizational Development, but she still preferred to be called by her first name. She walked the same halls she once hurried through, only now heads lifted when she passed, not because of her title, but because of the quiet respect she had earned. She stopped by cubicles, asked questions, listened to problems. When she smiled, people smiled back genuinely. The company had changed, and so had she that morning. She stood by her window, looking over the skyline. A knock came at her door. "Come in," she said. Ethan stepped in, holding 2 cups of coffee, one black, one light with sugar. He placed the lighter one on her desk. "You still take it sweet," he said with a half-smile. "Some things shouldn't change," she replied. Returning the smile, he glanced at the reports on her desk. "The board approved your new mentoring program," he said. "I saw," she replied, trying to hide her excitement. "It's your idea," Ethan said. "You should be proud." "I'm just grateful," she said quietly. "Do you ever think about that night?" he asked, leaning against the window. "The night you came to quit?" She nodded slowly. "Every time I think of giving up, I remember that moment." Ethan smiled faintly. "I almost didn't lock the door, you know," he said. She laughed softly. "Then I would have walked out." "Exactly," he replied. "And the company would have lost one of its best minds." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city breathe beneath them. Then he said quietly, "Do you know why I believed in you, Lena?" She turned toward him, curious. "Because you reminded me of myself. When I first became CEO, I thought leadership meant perfection. Then I realized it means perseverance. You had that from the start. You didn't just fix projects, you changed people. You turned storms into lessons." Her eyes softened. "I only did what I wished someone had done for me," she said. "And that," Ethan replied, "is exactly what great leaders do." That afternoon, Lena stood in front of a small group of new hires in the auditorium. Some looked nervous, others excited. All of them were starting where she once had. She held the microphone, smiled, and began, "When I joined this company years ago, I thought success meant being seen, but I learned it means seeing others. There was a time I nearly gave up. Not because I wasn't capable, but because I felt invisible. Then someone believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. That belief became my turning point." She paused, looking at the young faces before her. "You will face moments when everything seems unfair, when your effort feels unnoticed, when you'll want to walk away. But remember this, those moments don't break you. They introduce you to who you really are." The room was silent, every word sinking deep. She smiled softly. "Don't chase recognition, chase purpose. And when you find someone lost in the shadows like I once was, be the light that brings them out." Applause filled the hall. Not loud or wild, but genuine, warm and steady like the sound of gratitude. Lena's heart felt full for the first time. She didn't feel like she was climbing. She felt like she was lifting others. That evening, as the office emptied, Lena sat by her window one last time before heading home. The sky outside was painted with gold and violet. The same city that once looked cold now glowed with peace. Her reflection looked different, calm, strong, alive. She thought of the journey. The rain, the rumors, the rebuilding, the resilience. Every hardship had been a lesson. Every scar, a story worth telling. The door opened softly and Clara peeked in. "They're asking if you'll join the team dinner downstairs," she said. "I'll be there," Lena replied, standing up. She grabbed her coat and paused for one last glance at the office. The same office where she once trembled under pressure now felt like home. As she walked out, the last light from her window reflected on the hallway glass. Two shadows moved, hers and Ethan's from his office across the hall. Different paths, same purpose, building something bigger than both of them. Outside, the city was alive again, bright, buzzing, beautiful, and somewhere deep inside, Lena whispered the words that had carried her all along. "Storms don't last, but the strength they build does."